Yesterday I saw a very funny video on TikTok. It was filmed by a Dutch mom, and she had placed her phone on the kitchen table, and she was filming her two young sons. I think the youngest one was about 2 years old, and the older one was maybe 3, maybe 4. It's hard to tell. They had both these, blonde hair, blue eyes, very Dutch kids. She placed them one next to the other, and then she put 2 plates in front of these 2 kids. And on each plate, she put 2 pieces of candy, blue candy with a white covering of sugar. Looked delicious. And then she told her 2 sons, "Mama has to go away, but when I come back, you can take the sweets there, the candy. But if I am gone, you are not to touch the candy. So you have to wait until I'm back." And then she leaves. And then the kids, completely unaware that the camera is filming them, they sit there looking at that plate. Oh my gosh, that candy looks so delicious. And then they look at one another. It's like, what are you going to do? And then the youngest boy looks at his plate and he stretches out his hand. And the older brother is like, "No, no, no, no." And then with a mischievous look in his eye, he stretches out his hand and takes the candy. And the other boy is like, "No, no, 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 no." And he takes the candy, puts it in his mouth, and starts chewing on it. And he gets this big grin on his face, and his eyes are twinkling with joy that he is tasting this delicious candy. But the older brother is enraged, and he's looking at what's happening. He clearly sees that his brother is not listening to him. So what does he do? He appeals to a higher authority. "Mom, Mom, Mom, he's eating the candy. Mom, come, you have to do something." Nothing happens. The mother does not return. She's probably on the other side of the door just laughing, but she does not return. And so again, the boy looks at his younger brother and he's like, "So he doesn't listen to me? My mother is not responding. I have to do something. What am I going to do?" I'll let you know what he does in a minute. But this is exactly what is happening in today's gospel, where Jesus is at the temple. This is in Jerusalem. So he went up to the Mount of Olives to pray very early in the morning, and then he walks to the temple. And apparently, whenever people see Jesus, they know that they want to listen because he's a great storyteller, he's a great teacher. And so he's gathered quite a crowd around him, which has, of course, caused some jealousy with the local authorities, the scribes, the Pharisees. They don't like it at all that Jesus is so popular, especially because in the past Jesus has been quite critical towards them. Remember last week, Jesus was talking to the same scribes and Pharisees when they tried to correct Jesus and kind of blaming him for eating with sinners. And Jesus told that story of the prodigal son, also implying that they actually behave like the older son, and they should forgive. But of course, they're not happy with that kind of veiled criticism. So they kind of bring it to the next level. And now they want to publicly rebuke Jesus by trying to lure him into saying something that either goes against the Romans or against the law or against whatever Jesus preaches. And they interrupt Jesus' teaching, which is already extremely rude. And they push this woman inside of the circle where Jesus is teaching. And they tell Jesus, "This woman has committed adultery. We caught her in the act. And the law stipulates that these women, when they've done something like that, should be stoned." This is an extremely harsh punishment very cruel, existed at the time, and unfortunately still exists in some countries. It's a method of killing someone by throwing rocks at a person, or even rules about from which point you could throw those stones, and it couldn't be big rocks, the rocks shouldn't be too small, and the whole process should take about an hour to kill a person. That's horrible. And of course, especially from our point of view today, if you look at what this woman supposedly did and the punishment, it seems so completely disproportional and so ridiculous to ask for the death of this woman. Not to mention that the other participant in the crime isn't there either. The man is not there. Why? The story doesn't tell us. Maybe, he knew the scribes and the Pharisees. Maybe they protect him. But so there are already two kind of infractions. They disturb Jesus' teaching. They accuse only the woman. And what's even worse, this is the third thing that is so wrong about this whole situation. For them, it's not really about justice. It's not about the law. This is all about Jesus. They want to attack him. And they use this poor woman who may have erred. That's, Jesus doesn't say, well, what are you bothering me with? No, maybe she made a very serious mistake. But they turn her into a tool to attack Jesus, thereby robbing her from her dignity. Because even sinners have a dignity. They are still children of God. They can be forgiven. Anyway, they don't see her as a human being. For them, it's not about the law. It's not about justice. They use this woman as a tool. And then, of course, everybody is looking at Jesus. What is he going to say? He seems to be between a rock and a hard place. If he says, let the woman go, then he would basically say the law of Moses is no longer valid, which could give them a perfect religious reason to attack Jesus in public. If he would say, go ahead and stone this woman, then they would have two arguments against Jesus. The first one is, this guy who is preaching mercy and who's talking about a loving father and being a good shepherd, look what he just condoned, Don't believe him when he talks, when he's doing the kind, gentle Jesus. No, he's harsh. He's a man of the law. And so that would help them divide the followers of Jesus who came to Jesus because Jesus was telling them something new and was like rethinking what the law actually is supposed to be. And they could have another argument to attack Jesus. If Jesus would say, go ahead, stone them, they could say, but we aren't allowed to do that. The Romans, as long as they are in charge, they forbid us to execute anyone. So you're basically telling us to go against the law? That's what's in their mind. It's so evil. And they pretend to invoke Jesus as a rabbi. They call him teacher. It's like the kid, like, Mom, do something about this brother. And then the mother doesn't come, and Jesus here doesn't take the bait either. Instead, he bows down and he starts to write in the sand. We don't know exactly what he does. If you look at the Greek original text, it wants to say that he's really writing. He's writing something down. There are some scholars that say, well, maybe he was just writing down some very common sins that people would do. Other wrongdoings. Maybe to open their eyes that, look at that. There's more to this than just adultery. Look at all these other things, and maybe you'll recognize one or two of these sins in your own life. Anyway, what happens in the story of the two kids is that when mother does not react, the older boy is he jealous? He's angry. He wants to stop his brother, because if I am upholding the commandments of my mother, then so should my brother. I too want to eat that candy. And now he gets to eat it and there's no punishment? No, 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 no. So he then gets really aggressive. And he takes the arm of his brother and tries to rip the candy from his mouth. He's like, no, no, no. And he starts to beat his little brother. And the little brother is so in a sugar rush that he doesn't even realize that his older brother is hitting him now. And he just continues to eat. That makes him even more angry. It's like, "Argh!" You see this frustration in the video. And this is exactly what happens with the Pharisees and the scribes as well. Jesus does not react. He doesn't take the bait. Maybe he tries to make them think. When you don't say something, maybe that's even more important than saying something. He tries to have these Pharisees and scribes think about what they're actually asking here. But then they only get more irritated, and they keep pressing Jesus. We want to hear your opinion. Come on, you have to tell us what to do. And then Jesus looks up. There's a lot of movement in this gospel. So he is not looking at them, but then when they keep pressing him and aggressing him, he looks up at them and he looks them in the eye and he says, "The one who is without sin should throw the first stone." And he bows down again. And he continues to write in the sand. And then we hear what happens next. Their response is they are at a loss of words. Because now Jesus has completely turned the tables on them. If they pick up a stone and throw, that's basically saying, I am without sin. But everybody knows these guys. So then immediately other people would protest. He's like, wait a minute, how? You're without, no. Remember that one time that you said or did this and that? So they know that they cannot step forward and pretend to be without sin because they realize that, well, I'm not without sin, and they know it, and they are not without sin, so they shouldn't throw stones either. And so that is a very powerful way for Jesus to show them a mirror. Look at your own lives. And it's very telling that John stipulates that the oldest people leave the first. They know that they are sinners. They know that they messed up in the past. They have counted their failures. And the younger they are, the longer they keep projecting that, well, are you leaving? I'm not leaving, because that's basically admitting that I did something. Or you're leaving? Okay, but then I can leave too. It's so human, so recognizable. I mean, look at us priests. Who are, in general, and I'm generalizing here, who are the priests that are most on the fences, just like telling other people what to do and having these long homilies where thou shalt not, and this, and they write these rants on internet, or everything that's wrong with the world, everything that's wrong with that pope or that bishop or whatever, and if only people would be as zealous as we are. And I'm looking at that and it's like, dude, you're basically just a kid. I was you. I so recognize that attitude, but seriously, believe me, the kind of ideals that you propose now, you will fail at those ideals yourself. Just give it some time. It's really hard being a true follower of Jesus. You will fall. And the more you do, the more you will hopefully learn to empathize with those that also fall. The more you hear confessions, by the way, the milder you become, and the more you confess your own sins, the more you'll become a better confessor. That I think every priest with a bit of experience will agree with me. Because when you hear the confession of someone else, you realize, I do exactly the same thing. I am just as much a sinner as the other person. And the only thing that lifts us up in this sacrament is is not my virtue, it's not my talents or my qualities. No, it's God's forgiveness that is given to us without us having any merit or any, it's not a reward for a performance, forgiveness. No, it's a free gift that is given to us despite everything that we did wrong. This is exactly what Jesus hopes will happen, that they will start to realize, well, I can throw a stone, I'm a sinner myself. And you know what is interesting? The reason maybe that Jesus looks down and continues writing on the ground, this was a parishioner this morning that told me that. You heard that in another homily. The idea is that maybe Jesus wants to give them some privacy. He doesn't want to confront them. He's not like, oh, but dude, I know what you did wrong there. Let me remind you of. No, that's not Jesus. He's like, you want to leave? Just go. I don't need to know. This just he gives them in a certain way the privacy of their own, conscience and the decision that they make based on their conscience. So it's a very delicate way of Jesus to respect also their own responsibility, their own freedom. And then he looks up, when everybody's gone, he looks up, and this is the first time that he looks the woman in the eyes, and he says, where are they? Well, they're gone. Did no one condemn you? Because she must have been petrified. I mean, just a few minutes before, she was basically in danger of getting killed at that very same moment. Nobody condemned me. And then Jesus says the most beautiful thing, in which he shows how God looks at these situations. Because Jesus, he tells us, who hears me hears the Father. Who sees me sees the Father. So what Jesus does there reveals us something extremely important about the way God looks at us when we mess up. And Jesus says, me neither, I'm not going to condemn you. Just go, start anew, and don't sin anymore. So he opens up, literally, he opens the door to her new future. He gives her a new chance. Go, do better next time, improve. And that is exactly the core of what mercy is all about. It's about giving someone a new chance. And if you kill someone, you rob that person from the possibility of conversion. This is why the death penalty is so wrong. If you kill someone, that may satisfy your sense of justice, but it robs that person from some maybe remote chance. That's not up to us to decide how likely it is that that person will change his or her ways. But if you kill someone, then you definitely rob that person from any future. And thus also you rob God from the possibility to change this person for the better. So, but anyway, the most important thing that happens here is that Jesus, in his actions, gives witness of his Father. And his Father is all about mercy. It's all about making people grow by showing them that there is room for growth despite their sins. And that if they want, they can even ask for help with that improvement of their lives. So what happens with the kids? And then I'll get to Bilbo. The kids, when this fighting goes on, and it doesn't help, the violence doesn't help either, then the mother returns. And you see this older brother looking at the perpetrator and then looking at mom, and he's clearly waiting for the punishment. He's like, Mom, you go right ahead. Just bring your wrath and your anger. Bring it down on my little brother who's been so disobedient. Exactly like the story of the two brothers last week with the prodigal son. Just tell him. And then the mother, what does the mother do? She smiles. And she takes her two boys in her arms and she says, "You little rascals, I told you you shouldn't eat it. But I also told you that you could take the candy when I returned, so go ahead, eat the candy." That's her solution. And so it's surprising to the boy, of course, but I think he learns a very important lesson there. And that is that his mom is actually kinder than he is. That the authority, the one who's supposed to educate them, is actually educating them with love and understanding and a smile and seeing the humor of the situation. And that doesn't mean that she's going to do that all the time, that there will never be punishment. But in this case, I think the lesson that the older brother needed to learn is, I'm stricter than my mom. And who am I to judge my little brother when probably when I was his age, a long time ago, it's probably just a year that separates them, I would have done the same. My little brother, he doesn't understand why he couldn't eat that candy. So, and that's the empathy that you're supposed to learn in life, is that try to put yourself in the place of the person that you're accusing. In other circumstances, you may have done the same thing. You may have been just as wrong. This brings me to Bilbo. What is the biggest dilemma in Bilbo Baggins' story? It is when he's been threatened by Gollum. Remember, Gollum is actually trying to kill Bilbo. And because Bilbo has the ring, and then whatever he tries, he can't get that ring back. And he's so addicted to the power of that ring that he really hates Bilbo, and he wants to do anything to get rid of that guy and get the ring back. Bilbo knows this. And at one point, Bilbo has the ring on his finger. He becomes invisible. He's got his sword with him. And Gollum, because Bilbo is now invisible, cannot find Bilbo. And he's desperate, and he's looking in all directions and yelling and crying. And he's still angry. And Bilbo is there with his sword right in front of Gollum, the one who just a minute before threatened his life. And he's able, right there and then, to end it, to make sure that this evil creature can never do wrong anymore. And he decides not to kill Gollum, to have pity on Gollum, to have mercy. Many, many years later, his nephew Frodo is in the same situation. Frodo and Sam, they too learn that you cannot trust Gollum. Yeah, there may be a good side in him, Schmeagol, but usually Gollum just takes over. And he's dangerous. And at one point, Frodo is so frustrated that, look, he's like, Bilbo should have just killed Gollum when he could. And then Gandalf is like, oh, what did you just say? You know what? It's actually the pity of Bilbo, the mercy of Bilbo. That was the best thing that he could do. Also knowing what will happen in what's to come. It is thanks to Gollum that the ring gets destroyed, despite him maybe. But if Gollum hadn't been there, then Frodo might have kept the ring and it would not have been destroyed. So basically, Gandalf here is reminding Frodo that mercy can have unexpected consequences that can be so much more positive and beneficial for the world than just than justice. And by doing what seems to be the logical thing to do, it's just put an end to it. Mercy, even though it is risky, it's dangerous, it doesn't feel oftentimes the right thing to do, but mercy will always bear fruit. Forgiveness is always more powerful than violence. And so I think both Bilbo and Frodo will acknowledge this later on in their lives, that had it not been for that moment of mercy, Middle-earth would have been lost. It's a very powerful, and Tolkien himself, he's written this several times in his letters, that was maybe the most vital moment in the story of Bilbo and Frodo. It's all about mercy. And I think that's beautiful. It's so important in our current world to hear that, to be reminded of that. Because we're under so much stress and pressure. The 2 years of living with COVID and the fear we have and all the controversy in politics and in the news about what to believe and what to do. There's been so much discord, even encouraged by some people. And now we have that war in Ukraine, which also has so many ramifications, not just for the people there, but for the entire world. Like the other day, I was here at the supermarket, and 2 women were quarreling about the last bottle of sunflower oil because of the situation in Ukraine, where there are no sunflowers this year. So the oil is going to be extremely expensive if there will be any oil at all. So these 2 women were fighting about a bottle of oil. And, you know, we have such short fuses right now. And I don't know, I experience it all the time, maybe you too. Whether it's in traffic, you know, we're always like aggressive towards the people that, according to us, are not upholding the rules. And when we make a mistake, we're like, oops, sorry. I don't know why he gave me the finger. Come on, he's so worked up. Forgetting that we may have done the same thing just earlier on. It happens all the time. When we attack people on the internet, when we rant, we're always pointing the finger away from us. And what this gospel tells us to do, or invites us to do, is that, well, point the finger at yourself. Just look at your own heart. How do you want God to treat you as a sinner? Well, if you want that for yourself, why don't you want that for your brother or sister, no matter what he or she has done? We improve the world not just by imposing justice, by punishing. We improve the world with love and justice, but always justice wrapped in love, and love inspired and enlightened by justice. But if the moment you separate these two, things go downhill, things go wrong. But if you judge, always do it with love. That is what was lacking there at the temple. And always give someone room to try it again, because that's how you would like to be treated. Amen.